Welcome, listeners and viewers on the YouTube, to another exciting episode of the Show. We're two geeks talk about everything. My name is Aaron, and I am joined again this week by my good friend Brandon. Dude, how's it going?
Oh, it's awesome. Thanks for having me back. And this is I'm really looking forward to doing a real deep dive into one of my favorite Christmas movies of all time. So thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for being here once again. Usually my cousin Landon is our co-host, but he's out this week, so I'm really glad you were able to come in and take over. So today we are getting ready for a little journey back to the 1940s as we unravel the festive, fun-filled layers of the classic holiday film, A Christmas Story. Uh, this was actually, like I said, the 1940s, but it was made in 1983. Directed by Bob Clark, based on Gene Shepard's semi-fictional anecdotes in his 1966 book, In God We Trust, All Others Pay Cash. I love that title. That is just a fantastic title for a book of short stories. This is a holiday classic, and we've seen it countless times, especially during those 24-hour marathons on TBS. If you're anything like me, you leave the TV on 24 hours and you just watch it over and over and over again. I would fall asleep with it and eventually, wake up in the middle of the night and catch it where I left off. Brandon, what's your first memory of watching this film?
Yeah. So first of all, I think you nailed it. It's just saying what we used to do. It would come on TBS and TNT, I think, right there, Christmas. And I feel like there was probably about the mid 90s or so is when I think that it really started doing the 24 hours. And I can just remember just doing just that. Is that you're ready? We're out of school by that time, and you know you're settled in, and maybe tying off any last minute Christmas type things that you're getting ready for. And sure enough, that classic theme song that you hear just starts rolling, and it's time. And it got to obviously, I think that's my first memory of it, is to just recall back then as a teenager in high school, just getting in, sitting in and watching it. And then to the point to where you can quote it almost verbatim. And even now, it I just get almost the same excitement now when it comes on. And we're obviously with a 12-year-old, almost teenage daughter now, and she's getting into it. And it's just like you said, we can get in, and you can turn it off and you can go right back onto it and pick right up where you left off. And I'd say that's probably the fondest thing, is just kind of getting settled in when it was first, those early teenage years.
Yeah. So let's talk about the plot a little bit. But like we said before, it's set in the 1940s. Follows young Ralphie Parker, played by Peter Billingsley. He has one Christmas wish.
I want an official Red Ryder Carbine Action 200 range ball air rifle.
That's pretty classic.
You'll shoot your eye out, kid.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, what's the warning he's constantly getting?
You'll you'll shoot your eye out, kid.
Shoot your eye out.
You'll shoot your eye out?
You'll shoot your eye out! You'll shoot your eye out!
You'll shoot your eye out, kid.
Yeah. It is funny because, like you say, that the plot of the movie, but to be something that is an adaptation of short stories like it is, they do really kind of tether that whole thing into an actual story. And as you're watching this movie, you can tell the scenes as they go along. Those are, I would, what I presume are those short stories in themselves.
Yeah,
whether it be
it's like watching a series of short, like, vignettes happening, like, that really aren't connected to one another.
right.
But you've got the through line of this family that is preparing for and celebrating Christmas together, and Ralphie's one desire to get that BB gun. But then, I mean, you've got the story of what was it, Flick putting his tongue on the flagpole. I mean,
Yeah.
that's so random and out of left field, but, like, it's
Yeah.
not a Christmas Story without that story.
Or when he snaps with the Scott Farkas affair, or any of those. Yeah, any of those things like that, or the days leading up to, he's got his assignment and he's got a couple of days to to get in, what he does with his teacher, and putting the apple there, just trying to plant little seeds, of just give me this A so I can convince my parents that this is the right thing. Yeah, I mean that, or also like when he goes to see Santa, that was, that's another one of those stories. Or obviously what the O fudge scene,
Right.
when they're getting the tree, and like those are all, you can just tell that those are, hey, this one time my old man, you know, uh was yelling at the furnace, and he said the worst words that you can ever think of.
And then there were the Bumpus's hounds.
Exactly. Right. And for something in 1983 that was made into a film, and the stories from the 60s, it's genius, because to be able to put those and put them together is just, you know, those are things that you would think that I don't even know that they can do those things today.
Yeah, it's certainly one of a kind. And I almost feel like you either love that movie or you hate it.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
because I remember growing up, I was the only one in our house that loved it. And like
Yeah.
when I would insist on turning it on that 24-hour marathon, everybody else was like, "No, no, we're not doing it." And so it was like, well, then I need cable in my room so I can watch TBS up there
Yes,
instead of
exactly.
just like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
networks.
Well, and of course, growing up in my house, we only had the one TV that had the cable to it, so that was all that we were going to be able to watch. And Dad didn't really care what was on there. Of course, I think Mom was halfway invested. She was probably still trying to get things ready, and because she was the one who really wrapped all the gifts and everything else, kind of preparing for Christmas. And so it was just me, just locked in, right? And I'm one of these people that I, kind of like you, like almost visual. And when you see and hear things on repeat like that, I mean, man, they're earworms, and they just stay with you for forever. And almost that's like it, and it's now like it got to the point then, and nothing has changed. Even that time kind of in between, from college to kind of getting settled into getting married in my own life now, is like where you kind of don't watch it all the time, but it's and to know that they still do it now, I still find myself quoting this movie like before the line even happens, as I'm watching that scene.
Yeah, it's a major award.
Yeah. Oh, you should see what it looks like from out here.
That's so great. So we already mentioned Peter Billingsley as Ralphie. We have Melinda Dillon as Mrs. Parker, and Darren McGavin played the old man.
Mhm.
And gosh, the chemistry between this family is great. But did you know that they almost cast Jack Nicholson as the old man?
I think that I had heard that, yeah. But they and I'd seen him, not Nicholson, but who they initially did go forth and casting. I've seen him in other things, but you always just remember him as the old man.
Yeah.
Um, and I thought that it was a very nice little tip of the cap to them. I don't know if you ever saw the follow up to A Christmas Story, but when they redid it and they actually brought Peter Billingsley back and a lot of the old cast back, they just had his picture of the old man there on the wall, and you know he just fit it, because he was that crotchety old man, that crotchety old dad back in what you would think would be in the 40s. And I don't know, Nicholson, I think at that time was doing what, The Shining, and doing some of those thriller type movies,
Mhm.
hadn't gotten into Batman by that time, because that was what, 6 years later or so.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I could see him as the old man in that kind of a light-hearted type movie like it was. I think who they had, they nailed it.
Yeah, it was perfect. I can't see anybody else in that role. It it wouldn't fit. It just doesn't fit.
No. Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Um so yeah, the screenplay, like we mentioned, was based on Gene Shepard's book, but it's also on like radio monologues that he did. and he even made a cameo in the film. Now that's aside from him being the narrator. He has grown up Ralphie, um, speaking and sharing those memories from the future.
Right.
Do you know where the cameo is in the movie where
I
he
have no
like
idea.
actually shows up?
You telling me this is like fresh information. I have no idea.
Okay, I didn't know either because I don't know what he looks like, so I'm not sure where he would
The
show up. It's probably like a quick walkthrough like Hitchcock would have done on his movies.
Well, I feel like so you think about some of those scenes and you think about, well, was he one of the uh, first responders for Flick, or was he maybe in the crowd for Santa, like when they were in the mall? Was he? Let's see, there was another one where it seemed like there was a bit of a crowd. Or like was he like when they did when he was uh, uh, old blue when he did that dream where he was like
Yeah,
going after the robbers, like was he one of the robbers or something
yeah.
like that? So it could have been maybe any of those, or was he maybe the person who sold the tree? I don't know.
Doesn't it lose all the needles? Does it? No, it's one of them
Yeah,
balls.
yeah. Wow, this isn't a tree. That's a tree.
Um, the director Bob Clark had to scout 20 cities before choosing Cleveland as the exterior for filming, which is good because Higbeat's department store had a big place there, and that's like a crucial find for this movie. That was a kind of a pivotal role in the film, that store. Um, so let's talk about the legacy a little bit. So you already mentioned that there's a follow up. There's actually
Mhm,
three sequels
mhm.
that were made for this movie. I knew about A Christmas Story 2 that came out in 2012. I never watched it because I was like, no, that's an abomination. There's no
Yeah,
way.
yeah,
But I did watch A Christmas Story Christmas that came out last year with Peter
yes,
Billingsley as an adult
yes,
Ralphie. Um, and thought it was great.
yeah.
Not as good as the original, but it was fun seeing the original cast come back,
Mhm.
grown up, and I was disappointed that Melinda Dillon wasn't able to come out of retirement to play the mother again.
Yeah.
But it was touching the way that they kind of centered their Christmas around remembering the old man who had
Yes.
in their story had just passed away, and um,
Yeah.
I thought it was really good. But the other
Yeah.
sequel apparently came out in 1994. It runs in the family. Had you heard of
Never
that
seen
one?
either of them. Never.
Yeah.
No. 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 I don't know if I want to challenge myself to deep dive that or not. I just, because again, like I'm sure you could probably look at IMDb and see how well or poorly it actually did, as far as kind of looking at how they would rank it. But and I always think that, especially how they do movies now, or stories now, and you think of how what DC tries to do, or what Marvel absolutely does with getting those characters. And I think is Mean Girls now going to bring some of those original people? They're doing a new Mean Girls movie, which
Yeah.
is almost kind of a sequel. I just think that when you bring those original people back, that's where you have that connection.
Mhm.
You're invested in these people, like you're already
Yeah.
invested in these characters, and it doesn't matter if it's been 30 years or 5 years or whatever. You already kind of have that connection, so you want to see them again and see what they're doing. So that resonates with me more than what hey, we're just going to do those follow up, like what they did. Like you can even think of Home Alone, the
Right.
after Home Alone 1 and 2. It's the same thing. Like you're like, well, yeah, this is a cute person, cute kid who's doing the same mischief and hijinks, but it's not the original Kevin McAllister and what the McAllister family is doing.
Right. You want to give me a new Home Alone? Let's see Kevin McAllister as the adult,
Let's
as
let's do it.
as the guy who leaves his kid at home, and like I'm ready to see that movie.
I mean, I think we just came up with it. I think somebody needs to write into someone and say, "Hey, ad wizards, figure this out. Okay, get this crew together."
Get a pitch meeting going for this one.
Right.
Um, Oh shit, I was gonna say. Oh, did you see? There was a movie that reminded me a lot of A Christmas Story that came out. I think it was on HBO Max. Maybe 2 or 3 years ago. Um, it was 8-Bit Christmas.
Saw 8-Bit Christmas. I saw
Yeah,
8-Bit Christmas.
it was
Eh,
about a kid who wanted a Nintendo so badly.
Yeah, yeah, it was like 1985, and that
Yeah,
was me as a kid.
yeah,
Didn't get mine until 5 years later, but when the Super Nintendo was ready to come out. But it's the same thing, and I think I know we're getting off a little bit from A Christmas Story itself, but I think that uh, you know our generation now, you can tell they were writing to us
yeah,
by doing these nostalgic type movies. I mean, I can watching that movie, 8-Bit Christmas, like I can remember exactly what I was doing, and the fury that came when the one kid down the block had the Nintendo.
yeah,
Like it was the same thing, and so it's like, man, this is so nostalgic to me.
yeah. I remember when I was watching it, I was like, this isn't quite to the level of Christmas Story, but like, I wonder if like watching this is how like my parents' generation would have felt like watching A Christmas Story.
I I think so.
Seeing that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, you can just tell that because they had a lot of the same, the kids were gathering around the radio to listen to Little Orphan Annie. The decoder, those mail-in decoders. Like I'm sure they did the exact same thing when they were kids growing up.
Crummy commercial.
Yeah, yeah. The fury
Um,
and seriously, what really cracks me up too, Aaron, is like the that whole thing in the bathroom was just hilarious because I also think of myself now. You think about like the family that only had one bathroom in their
right.
house, and you just wanted that 5 minutes. And I think about Kara sometimes only wants that 5 minutes of relaxation, but she can't get it because you know I need something or my daughter needs something, and it's like completely interrupts any type of solitude that they were looking for. And all Ralphie wanted was to get 5 minutes in the bathroom, and he thought, "Hey, I'm just going to go and pretend that I'm going to the bathroom just to get away for a little bit and try to decode this thing just as frantic as he could."
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember that too. Like I grew up in a house that only had the one bathroom,
Mm-hmm.
and it was upstairs, and so that was the only place you could actually receive privacy
Yeah.
uh in the whole place. But
Yep.
man, never had a decoder ring though.
Me neither. I did
Uh,
have the magic ink, the invisible ink.
dude, I love those things.
Right. Yeah.
We'd get them at
Yeah.
Stuckey's every time we were on a road trip.
Well, you can only use it one time though, because you would use the ink and then you would put the other marker over top of it, and then you try to use it again, and then the invisible ink turned black or
Oh yeah,
whatever color that the marker was because you had to really kind of scrub over it, right, to
yeah,
kind of see what the message was. And so it's like you only got a couple of good uses out of it, and then it was now turned color, and then it also dried out so fast.
yeah. All right, so let's talk about the cultural impact of this movie, which I think is significant. The film setting, Homan, Indiana, is fictionalized. It doesn't exist, but it was based on Gene Shepard's hometown. But the real house that they used for exterior shots is a huge tourist attraction.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen some of the things like they will do, like especially over Christmas? They do some pretty big things. I heard there was a annually. I'm pretty sure I can't remember if it's a 5K or a 10K, maybe both. That they
Yeah,
do based around um that house and A Christmas Story, and like the
yeah.
medal that you get is like indicative of the movie, and it's really interesting.
Well, I kind of can appreciate those things, and I guess I'm sure they do things like that. Like what the Brady House comes to mind when you talk about things like that, like from the Brady Bunch movie. It's they'll always sometimes mention that when it sells or something, but you know, for a movie to have such an impact on such a large group of people, and for them to just say, kind of center this, even just to bring people together, over something the same, that they all have that same common thread. I think is anytime that you can do that, especially on something like this, is it's just fascinating. It's a really kind of good thing to happen in people's lives.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like you said, it's always great when you can bring strangers together who
Yeah,
have like this connecting tissue that is like, I don't know, it's like you reminisce over something together even though you've never experienced any of the same things before.
yep.
Um well, it's a timeless movie, and we know it's set in the 40s, but they never exactly say what year it is. Um like there's no mention of like, is this post World War II? Is World War II still happening somewhere in the background?
Mhm.
Uh, they just it's never really mentioned. Uh, did you know, this is a little trivia, that the actual Red Ryder BB gun they mentioned in the movie was never actually manufactured exactly as described?
Well, they did have Daisy though, right? Like that Daisy was the brand
Yeah,
of the BB gun, right? So I knew
right.
that was out and around. And I would have probably I didn't know that, but I would probably just presumed that it would have been. But it's interesting that it was just because I mean I almost feel like the BB guns that they kind of make that you've seen growing up was still very similar to what that was. So I would have
Yeah.
just presumed that it was the same type of model.
Um, initially, the movie was considered a sleeper. Nobody really cared for it when it hit theaters, but it has since become a holiday staple. And then I'm pretty sure Roger Ebert gave it a bad review when it first came out, but over the years, of course, before he passed away, he added it to his great movies list. So it grew on him.
So what would it have been at that time as to make him not considered as a good movie then? I wonder. Like, was it because it didn't have big name actors? Was it because it was clearly low budget? Was it because it wasn't? What was it then in the '80s that they were looking for when that came out that just didn't resonate at that time?
I don't know, because you think about that time of, this is when you were starting to get into some of those bigger budget type movies.
Yeah.
It's 83, so you would have had Indiana Jones had two movies that had already
Hmm.
come out. Um, or no, I guess
Superman
Temple
was
King would have
probably.
been next. Yeah,
I'm sure
Superman was
Superman
big.
and Star Wars were out then, right?
Yeah, Superman 3 came out in 83, so you already
Yeah.
had three of those.
And I
And
think
Return of
was
the
that
Jedi came out in 83.
Return of the Jedi? Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got
Maybe that
all
was it.
these
Maybe
bigger
that was
budget
just that
movies.
they were all kind of in that year.
So, and you wonder too, like with this being specifically a Christmas movie, how much like press tour
Yep.
would the actors in the studios have um invested in to advertise this movie?
Well, if those big budget films came out then, there must have been some degree of exhaustion if they came out in May into the summer,
Mhm.
whatever, and then all you're getting into the first part, after Thanksgiving, first part of December, and you're like, but then again, you see some of these films that do come out during the holidays that are supposed to do very well, and it would be interesting to see what movies were coming out in that fourth quarter that were notable movies that came out versus this one.
Right. So let's see. I was gonna look. The Rotten Tomatoes has it at an 89% approval rating. And so that ranks it as one of the best Christmas movies out there. It's again, that's so funny because it did so poorly in the box office. Um, but before we wrap this up, um, I wanted to mention a recent accolade. Uh, when I was doing some research on it, it said it got a nomination for Best Digital Comedy and won for Best Digital Animation slash Family at the 2023 Golden Trailer Awards. I don't know what that is, but hey, good job. 40 years later,
Good on
winning
you.
awards.
Good on you. Well, and I think also that it's very fitting that you think of other Christmas movies, and as we've been talking, Four Christmases just sticks out so much in my mind with Vince Vaughn and Reese Witherspoon, and I'm pretty sure Peter Billingsley is in that film
Yeah,
as
cameo.
the
He's one of
the
the he works for the airline.
he works for the airline. Yeah,
Yeah, he's the
and
guy that
so
tells him, "Sorry, your flight's been canceled."
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So good for him. I can't. That's also one of my favorite Christmas movies as well. As for we, yeah, Karen, I've already seen it at least twice.
He also shows up in Elf.
Yeah.
He
Hmm.
is one of the toy makers or like a
Yes, he
manager
is.
from the toy making line.
Yeah.
Uh, buddy, you're not a cotton-headed ninny muggins. But that's
Buddy is
it is
killing me.
interesting. Like a lot of his career has actually been behind the camera as an
Yeah.
adult, and so like he's really close with John Favreau and Vince Vaughn from their swingers days when they made
Hmm.
that movie, and so like a lot of the movies that they make, you'll find him either on the production side of things or writing. So yeah, and when he gets back on camera, it's good to see him doing
Yeah.
stuff. And like we mentioned before, the A Christmas Story Christmas was a really decent follow up
Hmm.
to the Christmas Story. So
Yep.
if you haven't seen
Totally
that, check
agree.
it out.
Totally agree.
All right, so that's going to conclude our journey into the heartwarming world of A Christmas Story. Brandon, do you have any final thoughts?
Uh, 30 minutes wasn't enough.
No,
30 minutes was not near enough to really
nope.
dig into this movie. We didn't get
Just
into quotes. We didn't do, hey, let's do Office Space next. Can we do that? Can we do
Office
Office
Space.
Space or maybe
Yeah,
even
man.
Shrek next? If you have me back, that is.
Oh yeah, yeah. We'll get you back. We'll get you back. All right. So to our listeners, if you haven't seen A Christmas Story yet, what in the world are you waiting for? It's a must watch. You don't even have to wait until Christmas Eve for TBS to do the 24-hour thing. It's on Max right now. So get it on your computer, on your TV, on your PlayStation, whatever, and watch it. That's it for today's episode. Brandon, thank you once again for filling in this week. Hopefully we will get you back and we'll talk about Office Space, man.
Thanks
Another
for
great
having me,
movie.
buddy. Yeah, that's another great one. Yeah, this was a lot of fun, man. And both last episode and this one, this was a lot of fun. It's great. Always great seeing you. Always great catching up. Always great talking about these things and just having good conversation, man. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you. All right, we'll get you back sometime. As always, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to be notified whenever we post anything new. And until next time, have a great whatever it is, wherever you are.